Welcome to the Bullish Drive Podcast, where we explore the realms of faith, mental performance, and personal testimonies through conversations with high-level performers. Join us as we extract valuable insights from their experiences to supercharge your pursuit of peak performance. This is the Bullish Drive Podcast. What's up, fam? Welcome to another awesome episode of the Bullish Drive Podcast, and where today we're diving deep into the profound connection between music and mental health. So let's kick it off with the exploration of recognizing the age-old bond between music and our minds, beautifully documented in the Bible. And the Bible, music is revered for its power to soothe troubled minds and lift spirits. Taking song in the Old Testament, for example, struggling with tormenting thoughts. David, a skilled harpist, the same David that killed Goliath, stepped in and played music that calmed Saul's troubled soul. This act echoes the therapeutic nature of music and its ability to alleviate mental distress. Now, the Psalms, often accompanied by musical instruments and attributed to inspired writers like David, express a range of emotions. They showcase the profound impact music can have on our feelings, taking us from despair to hope, from sorrow to rejoicing. And as we move into the New Testament, the Apostle Paul urges believers to use music, psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to connect with one another and the Lord. This underscores the communal and personal aspects of music, highlighting its potential to bring joy, unity, and spiritual upliftment. Understanding the spiritual and emotional resonance of music, particularly within the context of the Bible, sets the stage for us to explore the mental health benefits of engaging with this universal language. Music isn't just about what we hear, it's a profound spiritual and emotional journey that reaches deep into our being. As we dive deeper, let's keep in mind this ancient wisdom that celebrates the therapeutic and transformative power of music, a power that has stood the test of time and continues to resonate with us today. Now, when we talk about opera, we're delving into a world of vocal and emotional expression at its pinnacle. However, what often goes unnoticed are the mental hurdles that come with its territory. Being an opera singer isn't just about hitting those high notes, it's about managing the pressure and roller coaster of emotions that come with the job. Beverly Sills, a celebrated opera singer, once emphasized that mastering opera isn't just about singing, it's about managing the lifestyle that comes with it. And research tells us that opera singers often battle with anxiety, depression, and performance-related stress. And the pressure to maintain vocal health, meet artistic standards, and keep up with the demanding performance schedule can be overwhelming. Understanding mental health, managing stress, and adopting effective coping strategies are crucial for them to just navigate their demanding careers successfully. Luciano Pavarotti, a legendary tenor, rightly stressed the importance of caring for both the voice and the mind. He highlighted the intricate link between physical health, mental well-being, and vocal performance. And for opera singers, reaching their highest potential involves not only mastering their craft, but also nurturing mental resilience and maintaining a positive self-image. Now, Maslow's concept of self-actualization is applicable in this context too. Opera singers strive for self-actualization, realizing their full potential, being creative, and experiencing personal growth. It's a journey beyond singing. It's about becoming the best version of themselves. And mental resilience, determination, and a positive self-image are critical elements of this journey. This journey isn't exclusive to opera singers. It's a universal truth for high-level performers, whether you're an opera singer, an NBA player, or an esports legend. Though the arenas may vary, the understanding of mental grit and life management remains fundamental across these domains. And today, we have a special guest, a good buddy of mine from my time at Luther College. He's now the casting director for the Munich Opera House. Welcome to the podcast, Erik Malmquist. For those who don't know, I used to play an instrument, the violin, and it actually helped me get through college. I played on the symphony orchestra at Luther, and we traveled, we did some touring, and my concert master was a dude named Erik Malmquist. And super blessed to reconnect, have him on the show today. So Erik, welcome on.
Thanks for having me, James. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's crazy that it's been as long as it has. And some of my fondest memories from college were symphony orchestra and our tours. And I don't know, you and I were the same year, so we really sort of came of age together in that.
That's right.
In those days. Yeah. So no, after Luther, I was a music education major at Luther College. But I also played violin relatively seriously. And then I went on to grad school in violin performance. After graduate school, I moved to New York, where I was freelancing as a freelance violinist. And I also started to do some administrative work while there. And I sort of found, and we can sort of talk a little bit more about this, but I found it was really challenging to sort of serve two masters in some way. The sort of excellence that I'd kind of gone through grad school working toward and sort of striving toward was very hard to maintain while being an administrator in different functions. I also found I liked administration. I liked the sort of the craft of making music, bringing music to the stage, and sort of helping artists create great performances, which I found in some ways more thrilling than the actual performing myself. And so I sort of slowly, and then it sort of sped up, just decided to stop pursuing it professionally and really focus on being an arts administrator. So from there, I became an agent. I'm sort of lucky to sort of end up with a very fine agency in New York. Zemsky Green was the name of it, managed some big talent. And then from that point, one of the big responsibilities you have as an agent is to be at as many of your artist performances as possible, not only following up on their performance and trying to get them booked for further performances, but also scouting for other talent that you see on stage. So in those years, I was just constantly in performances, backstage with artists, after the show with artists, which is also a really interestingly vulnerable time for them, and getting to know the sort of the global operatic scene. During COVID, I managed an orchestra back in my hometown, and then I was offered a job as the head of casting at the Bavarian State Opera, which is based in Munich. So, which is where I'm sitting. I'm sorry, where there's actually rehearsal going on inside. So I'm sitting currently outside of our second theater here on the Prinzregentenstrasse in Munich, where I now serve as the casting director.
Man, that's a wild journey, man. That's awesome though. Like that's so
Nice.
cool to hear. Man, I can definitely relate though about like just the traveling and being at all these performances, especially as a mental skills coach, just having to be pulled in all these directions and managing your schedule and organization. Now, you said something during your intro about the vulnerability of around the performances. What's that like? Like, how much of that do you have to manage as an agent and working with high level performances like that?
Yeah, I was sort of surprised to find out, like, the higher it got, that it didn't get any easier to be on stage, that it didn't get any more sort of, there's a routineness to it, of course, as one kind of gets into the sort of rhythm of professionalism, but that no matter what, after a performance, the singers that I was working with would invariably ask for feedback. And very rarely actually wanted it. They were very rarely in a headspace where they were ready to sort of receive feedback on what they had just done. What they wanted to hear from you in that moment, which I completely understand, was you were brilliant. Because this person just had to sit out in front of 2,500 people for the last 3 hours and give so much of themselves that they were not in a place where, despite their asking for feedback, they were not in a state to receive it in a meaningful way. And so if there was, I found often, I had to sort of screen that feedback and be ready to, or I try to be very honest and transparent. I try to never lie to people and say you were wonderful when you weren't, but to be ready to give a sort of a screened version of feedback, and then when somebody's in a more less of a vulnerable moment, to then really start to talk about how do you progress past what you did today, how do you correct the things that didn't go right, and how do you capitalize on the things that did go right.
Yeah, man, that's so there's almost like a level of humility balance that you have to do with your performers, in a sense, which is like, because you said like they want to hear that they're brilliant, right? But a part of growth is accepting like there's areas to grow. So where does that even come from? How do you even begin developing a relationship where you can get to that point where you can build them up like that?
Yeah, I mean, artists are an interesting breed, it's because you're sitting there giving so much of yourself in a very difficult to quantify business. And so to develop your relationship with them requires, there's the easy path, which is to be the yes person, the person that always validates, the person that always gives them what they want to hear. But they are, especially the higher and higher you get in business, they're surrounded by those people. There's always the people ready to tell them what they want to hear. And so I found that developing a sort of a slow and trusting and open relationship required a lot of honesty, a lot of discomfort. I'm from the Midwest, you're from the Midwest, and we share this sort of aversion to making people unhappy, uncomfortable. Yeah. In my growing up, there was nothing worse than making somebody feel bad, you know? And so I really have to sort of steel myself to be ready to give somebody feedback that they may not want to hear, but they ultimately need. And I found that if you do that slowly, respectfully, and openly, the relationship develops in a much deeper way than if you're simply giving validation.
Yeah, and especially for like young artists, you know, I feel like in music, there is a much higher level of constructive criticism that you receive, either from your coaches or teachers, or just people who are, you know, judging you. Like if you're in tournaments, competitions, you know,
Yeah.
you know, that type of setting. Should a young musician really prepare for? What is that level of emotional weight carry as you move into the professional world? Because like you said, that doesn't change, right? Is it more?
Yeah.
Is it heavier?
Yeah, no, it is, because I feel like the better you get, the bigger challenges are thrown in front of you, which is what's exciting about what we do. And so it's never, as a young performer, if you're in it for the validation, you shouldn't be there, you know? And I think a lot of us fall into that trap. That as a young performer, you should really love what you do and be very clear. And I think really look yourself in the mirror, say, do I do this because I love it? Do I do this because I come to life when I'm doing it? Or do I do it because I come to life when I talk to somebody after the show and they tell me I'm amazing? And I feel like these are two really important. And then if you are the kind of person that is looking for that validation, that's not a deal breaker, but be sure that you then need to start to change your perspective when you walk out on stage. You're doing it for yourself. You're bringing yourself to the performance. You're not trying, because look, when you're 16 years old, you're waiting for your parents backstage to tell you you're wonderful. When you're 18 years old, you're waiting for your friends at school to tell you you're wonderful. When you're 25 years old, you're waiting for your, the people you hang out at the bar with to tell you you're doing, and they're always going to be there, and it always feels good, but do it for you, not for them. And it's possible to do it, to switch from one form of kind of, but anyway.
Yeah. No, that's so true, man. And I'm not sure if the statistics are the same, but in athletics, like the burnout rate for a 13-year-old is like 70%, in sports.
Yeah.
Just because like a lot of times parents are kind of reliving their glory days through their kids instead of pushing them. And so what you said was like beautifully said. Like you really gotta find out why you're doing this and why you love it. Another thing that I find interesting about music is that unlike sports, oftentimes you're training for one major performance, that's like maybe a month away or something like that. So like I feel like there's so much more riding on that one performance to succeed. So how do you balance that dichotomy of like trust the process or shoot for the outcome? How do you balance that in a professional musician?
Yeah, it's so true. And actually, working in opera, we have all of our guests are here on freelance contracts. So they come, and if they give a good performance, the best case scenario, they get a contract 5 years from now. Worst case scenario, they don't get an offer. And often in these, I'm sitting here in Munich, so I'm 4 hours from Zurich, I'm 5 hours from Berlin, I'm 3 hours from Vienna. Often my colleagues from those houses will be at our performances, and so there's, as you say, there's so much more that rides on a single performance. And I think that that increases, that we're talking about before, that increases the weight. As you grow into these performances, every performance carries much more much more implication for your future, for your professional life. And I don't know that I have a sort of silver bullet to that, except for what I found is that the most successful people are the ones that plan very carefully everything they do in the performance, that they leave as little up to chance as possible. Chance is a variable that exists in everything we do, which is what makes live performance fun. But knowing that a performance that doesn't live up to the highest level let me put it in the positive way, which is like a performance that really lives up to your potential. If you're singing in our house, it has the potential to also be heard by Vienna, by Zurich, by Berlin. If you deliver an excellent performance, it could result in further engagements in your future and in growth professionally. So that I find these people that plan every note, the way they move between every note, the way they plan to step on stage, where their foot is going to fall at a given moment in the aria, where there's no chance left. You've worked out everything, so that you never find yourself, as I am in this sentence right now, in a place where I don't know how to escape it, you know? So, you know, and so the people that are so careful and so well executed in everything they do, and you could tell it when you see them repeat it night after night, that there was nothing arbitrary about the way they moved between two notes, and these touching, beautiful moments that you as a young musician can do sort of by accident. You sort of stumble across them. You find that at the highest level, it's the one they've taken those moments and they've really crafted them to make a meaningful product instead of just a meaningful moment. And that elimination of chance, in any place you can eliminate chance, helps to kind of curb nervousness and curb performance anxiety in the face of a demanding performance.
Yeah. Oh man. So there's so much more about knowing what you can control. And when you recognize that, just making sure you own those things, right?
Right.
Man, that's so good. Yeah. What do you tell musicians or clients that you're working with when they're in the middle of a performance and all of a sudden something gets taken by chance, right? Something just falls out of their control. What do you tell them so that they keep their mind back in the flow, you know, back in the performance, and just helping them stay in peak?
I did my share of athletics in high school, and so I sort of revert back to an old moment of because I feel like it's the easy thing when somebody's having a bad performance, and they know it, they're not stupid, you know, they feel it, you know, and so you go back, you know, there's nothing worse than going back there and be like, hey, how you do it, you know, because they don't need that, they're doing bad. You heard it, I heard it, and so if you're able to go out there, go back there and just say, hey man, like that sucks, you're gonna need to stand up and do better, like, and you can, like, that's not what you sound like, we know, you know, again, not pretending for a moment that somebody had a good, just say, it's okay, so you screwed up, you know, so it didn't go great, stand up and collect yourself, put it back together, take a deep breath, and let's go out there and do it. And sometimes people need to hear it. There's nothing more to it than that. I find that just sort of saying, I'm here with you, we're all sitting out there, and we're still pulling for you.
And do you think, like, so we call it grit, do you think that grit is just more built into the biology, if you want to call it that, of high level performers, like just to keep pushing through? I had someone from Maverick City on the show, and they're just talking about, until they made it to Maverick City, they're just doing audition after audition after audition after audition, consistently being told, like, you didn't make it, you're not good enough, you're not what we're looking for. And she just talked about grit, like, you got to buckle down and be like, if this is something I want to do, I'm going to keep trying to do it and get better along the way. Is that how much is that built into the tapestry of high performing musicians?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, there's always an exception to this rule, no question. But I think most people that have reached a high level, as you say, they've experienced it. They've experienced every kind of failure, and they know how to stand up when they're down on the field. They know how to get up, and that's something that just comes from the years of trial and error. And the ones that aren't able to do that tend to just not make it past a certain point. So I guess, put another way, everybody has figured out how to dust themselves off and get back out on the field. And that's that's hard, you know, it's hard in life, that's hard in everything we do, that's not just performance space, you know. And I think the people that I admire the most are the ones that, it's not that they've been like a life of success, is they've taken their share of hits, and they have still managed to pull it all together, you know.
Keep pushing through. What's the mental preparation look like prior to performances, like, because you mentioned, like, just performance anxiety and stuff like that. What kind of pre-performance routine do you see your musicians go through to get into the mindset?
Oh, I love this. I have a 30,000 foot view of it because I have to do dressing room checks to make sure everybody's there, making sure everyone's sort of, in a good spot. There's no problem, somebody didn't disappear or something like this. And so you see everything across the board. Some people, we actually have one artist who's in the building behind me right now, who is chronically late for every performance.
Oh no!
Which flies in the. But actually, I once talked to the agent about it, and I now understand, and I'm quite empathetic to it, that there's nothing that this artist hates more than waiting. That waiting is the worst, and that for him, he cannot do it. It increases anxiety. So his sort of fallback is he is intentionally late so that he can just walk in, throw his costume on, do a couple warm-ups, and just go out on stage. On the other side, you find these people that are completely silent in their dressing rooms, that are just sort of finding their peace, finding their place, finding who they are. And the thing that I think is more often the case than anything else, which I find very touching in some way, because this is a really hard career, and I don't know if we can talk about it, but like these people are always away from their families. That's because our rehearsal periods are relatively short, but still they're away for 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time. And I find very often I walk into a room and most people I know spend their last minutes before going on stage on a phone with their spouse or with their kids, and just sort of checking in, just sort of using them to find that sort of support and encouragement. So those are the sort of three types that I've stumbled across, I think.
Yeah, that's good, man. I was actually going to talk a little bit about that too, just the time commitment to be a professional musician, because athletes, you see it all the time, right? They're always on the road, they're going to these places. You got people like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant talking about just being away from family, but I don't think a lot of musicians quite grasp there's also a lot of time away from family. And you kind of touched on it, but how do people manage that? Like, how do you keep a healthy relationship with that?
It's funny that you bring this up, because I remember one time at Luther, I think you probably were there. Do you remember Erik Cutler came and gave a lecture? Do you remember this? So Erik Cutler was, for those who don't know him, he's a Luther alum like James and I, but he was a very, very well-known tenor. Mm-hmm. And he actually sings with us quite a bit now. He gave this interesting talk. So Luther is a place where music is put on a pedestal, and it exists sort of as an abstract concept. I mean, we made great music there, but the professional music life sort of it exists in a different universe, in a mountain far away. And so, I mean, I think for those of us that really wanted to do it professionally, we saw it as the most exciting thing we could strive toward. And that once you've made it, you've gotten your job in a professional orchestra, you're a professional singer, that you've made it, and then life will be accomplished. Mm-hmm. And Erik was the first person. He came and gave a recital and then a masterclass, and he was the first person to say, guys, this life is hard, and this is there's no way to slice it. And of course, at age 20, it's a little bit more challenging to sort of think about and like what exactly your spouse and your family means to you, but like what it's like to be on the roads constantly. And the people with the best careers are never at home. I mean, it really, it's mind blowing that if you want to be a serious singer and make a big living, you'll spend 3-4 weeks a calendar year at home. And that's if you're lucky enough to sort of build in breaks and stuff like this. And so, you find yourself, they find themselves always away from people, never having a real stable structure, and tempted by situations that cause problems in marriages. And we see that, and this is what Erik was referring to in this thing. He was at the time on his third marriage. I can report now that Erik is now very happily married with this wonderful German soprano. And but I think you find yourself really lost in the wilderness, and you forget that after years of growing up with family at home and then friends in college, that life of stability that we grow to trust is completely gone as you're just alone in a hotel room. And I don't know, it's a hard career. I don't think I just answered your question. I think I just wandered off a whole different tangent.
No, that was good. I like the transparency of it, to see the window into it, because these are conversations that I feel like aren't really talked about. like
Yeah.
the really difficult side of it. Can you have a family as a high performer? Yeah, you can, but it's a little bit harder.
You have to work. You have to work at it.
Yeah, 100%. So no, I appreciate that. You did answer it in a way I wasn't expecting, but it was a good way. So it was good. Yeah. So what's we'll kind of get near the end of closing here, but I want to talk a little bit about the community and the support systems kind of required and needed to just maintain your own mental health in a career like this, considering all the things we've talked about thus far. Like, how important is it to have a good support system around you?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more important at all, like, ever. And I think that what I've seen from the artists that we work with, I mean, vocal music is much closer to athletics than strings and piano, just by virtue of the internal mechanism. The actual musculature is very physical, and so every serious singer I know has a teacher they still go to on an extremely regular basis. Often they warm up with them on a daily basis just to check in the same way that a pole vaulter has to check form, because there's little things that may not be showing up as problematic in the actual performance, but a good coach has an eye for those kind of things. And so that kind of structure is so important, not only for the actual physical corrections, but also for the knowledge that I'm not alone in what I'm doing, that that there's somebody there that's supporting me, that's looking for these flaws, not in order to write a mean blog post or something like this, but to make sure that I'm performing at my highest level. And the other side of it, and the support structure is when it comes to the home front, like I say, that's hard in this career. That's impossibly hard in this career. And I guess unlike athletic careers, they are much longer. People, some of our singers perform into their 60s. And the ones that I know that have done it successfully with families often have, which I think is deeply unfair sometimes, but often have a spouse that either doesn't work and travels with them, or does work but is able to work remote, or and that's not so easy. And I don't have a sort of cohesive answer for how to do it correctly, because I'm not sure that there's very few times I've seen a really successful it's a hard life.
That's very real, man. Well, yeah. And I appreciate you being on here and just sharing just your experience and thoughts about it. What's happening in Munich there? Anything big coming up that you want to let people know about?
So we're in the middle of the Munich Opera Festival, which dates back to the 18 somewhere, give or take. And so we're in the final stages of this. So our season's about to close on July 31st, but we come back in the fall with a super exciting season. So we'll open with the new production of The Marriage of Figaro, which will be fantastic. So come hang out in Munich. Munich is an opera house that traces its history back 500 years. One of the most storied histories of opera in the world, and it's Olympic level opera making, and it's really fun. So if you ever pass through town, it's worth a stop.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the show today, Erik. If you are in the Munich area, check out the Bavarian State Opera, where they are putting on Marriage of Figaro right now in the season. And if you're interested in partnering with a faith-based mental performance coach to help you reach your goals, check us out at www.bullishdrive.com. I would love to chat with you. And always remember, it starts with you, and your destiny is waiting. We'll see you next week. Peace.